Good evening. We want to thank everyone for joining us this evening for National Transgender Day of Remembrance. It is an honor on behalf of United Presbyterian Church to welcome you here this evening. We're grateful to be able to host this night. We are one of the affirming congregations that is in the central Illinois area. And regretfully, our pastor cannot be here this evening just due to an abundance of precaution after a family member was exposed to COVID. But she's very gracious to be hosting and very, very glad that you're all here tonight. Before I turn our program over, my name is Nicole, so I attend United Presbyterian Church myself, and I'm also a board member for Peoria Proud, who's one of the co-sponsors for this evening. Our other co-sponsors for the night are Knox College out in Galesburg, Illinois, the Universalist Unitarian Church of Peoria, Peoria Transgender Society, and we're thankful to have Riley's Vegan Sweets and Eats providing cookies for after tonight's event. Due to COVID precautions, we do ask that masks remain on at all times. And unfortunately, we will not be gathering after the evening as we would normally do, again, out of COVID precautions. But please make sure to grab a cookie on your way out. And again, we do very much thank you for joining us on this somber night.
I'll open with a blessing from H.P. Rivers. Blessed are the wanderers seeking affirmation. Blessed are the worshipers praying from closets, from pulpits, pews, and hardship. Blessed are the lovers of leaving family and familiarity, leaving tables where love is not being served. Blessed are those who stay. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for justice, for they will be satisfied. Blessed are the queer, disciples of truth, living, breathing, sacred reflections of divine love. Blessed are each and every one of us in this moment and in this gathering. This is our sacred work to recognize and remember and cherish those who have died, who have been the victim of violence against those who are transgender. My name is Reverend Jennifer Innes, and I'm the minister with the Universalist Unitarian Church here in Peoria. It is an honor to be with us this evening. I want to welcome folks to this event, for this is our work, this is the people's work. All who gather, whether we are in person, as so many of us are this evening, whether we are online, whether we are simply in spirit recognizing and cherishing and naming those who must be named, those who have died in this past year since our last service of such remembrance. For this moment, I want to start with welcoming our keynote speaker for this evening, Christina King, she, her. My pronouns are she, her as well. Christina King was originally from the South, but was raised in Galesburg, Illinois, growing up with an appreciation for her community. As a child of a single mother, Christina understood the meaning of hard work and patience. This attitude is carried over into Christina's adult life And as a graduate of Galesburg High School, King has always been an active member of groups ranging from arts to animal rescue and so much more. As an active member of First Lutheran Church, King uses her voice to help enrich services with music. She serves on an inclusive faith committee who welcomes those that have traditionally been ostracized by religion. An outcome of this committee was Safe Space, a social outreach group for young adults. King served as a fundamental part of the group's inception and continuing activities such as the annual Pride Picnic, where she was founder and organizer before the pandemic. Ms. King was Miss South Carolina Queen USA 2016. Nice. I know South Carolina. She leveraged her title to raise awareness of the health and social needs of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, and plus community by pushing for access to accessible and affordable health care. As Miss Trans Illinois USA 2020, she's continued with the work she was doing to expand access to public health resources for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asex, and more community, as well as raise visibility for the trans community of the state of Illinois. And recently, she used her platform to partner with and mentor medical teaching programs to help teach their students to learn how to better fit the needs of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, plus questioning, queer, plus community, especially trans and GNC folks. There's this and so much more. She is a leader and a mentor, encouraging people in our community to show up and assume leadership roles. I want to celebrate and honor and welcome this leader and this person who is driving and models driving into the future to make a better Illinois. Let me welcome Ms. Christina King.
Thank you so much, Reverend. Oh, sorry, that might make it a little bit easier. Thank you so much, Reverend. Good evening, everyone. I would like to start by thanking all of you for attending this vigil and for allowing me to share this space with you. I know we covered a little bit about myself, but here's a short little blurb. I was born in South Carolina and grew up here in Central Illinois. I grew up in a conservative religious home that you could call Catholic adjacent. My home life was pretty cut and dry. Back then, boys were boys, girls were girls, and you were expected to go to school, graduate. If you went to college, great. If not, that was fine. But you were to get married to someone of the opposite sex, start a family, and live happily ever after. With your God-fearing family, inside of every family, though, there are secrets. I had a family member who used to abuse me, verbally, physically, emotionally, and sexually. I had a loving family who removed me from this situation once the severity of the abuse was brought to their attention. Growing up, I always knew I was different. I was this cute little effeminate boy who loved to play the mother of the house when we were playing house. I loved to be the princess and imagine I had long, flowing locks with all of my friends. We would pretend we were waiting for our princes to come and save us. On the inside, though, I always knew there was more. Like a lot of trans-experiencing people, I could never see myself growing up to be a man and marrying a woman, etc. In the 8th grade, on my way home from confirmation class, after hearing how homosexuals were terrible people, my mother and I were talking, and I was trying to fit in with the group. I was saying things like, I could never be gay because so on and so forth. All of a sudden, though, I slipped. I said to my mother, well, I'm gay, and continued the sentence like nothing was there. And I will never forget where we were in the car and the look that my mother had of, wait, what? What was that? as she tried to see what I had just said and have me repeat myself. In that moment, I was terrified. I had grown up in a family where being LGBTQIA was not acceptable, and a religion that damned me for being that. And I feared, as most people do in our community, that I would lose my family and friends. We got home, and my mom sat me on the couch, and she said, or on her bed, she said, held me tight, and she told me it would be okay, that no matter what, she would love me. And we both broke down crying for what seemed like forever. At the age of around 19, I saw my first example of what a trans woman was. I had never been exposed to a trans person, and seeing it on TV was just shocking, and I instantly gravitated towards it. I finally knew what was missing in my life. I could never ever figure it out. I always just felt there was some part of me that was not right, that was wrong, that was missing, but I couldn't put a finger on it. And as soon as I saw this woman, I knew that was who I was. I knew that I was a trans woman. I knew that that is who my authentic self was. So I went through the rabbit hole of Google and exploring and reading everything I could possibly get a hold of. Within 6 months, I had created a plan and knew what I needed to do. The following year, I finally grew the courage to speak to my family and explain why I'd been struggling so much. I let them know about the abusive relationship I had been in, and that had pushed me to lose sight of myself. I had finally figured out how I could live with myself. At the time, I was very much struggling with my mental health and couldn't quite figure out why. I kind of was in denial that there wasn't anything wrong, that I just needed to get over it and pray about things. Through my transition, I've learned a few hard lessons, though. One was that family is not always blood. Sometimes family is the ones that you choose. I learned that I had to love myself before I could expect others around me to love me. Holy, this is something that I struggle with every single day. I learned that this world is so much crueler than I had been taught as a child. I learned the heartbreaking statistic that as a trans woman of color, I was 50% less likely to make it to the age of 35 as my peers. I had to learn that far too often women like myself ended up on the list that we're going to read tonight. And I had to learn that most of them ended up on the list because of people who claimed to love them, who they knew. This past week was Transgender Awareness Week. It's a time for us to celebrate and for us to own our true authentic selves. It's a time for us to support and uplift each other for our talents and work throughout the community. It's our time to shine and stand as one. Today is the day that we celebrate the lives of our fallen siblings. While all of these things are true, we must also rally together to protect one another. I challenge you to rally together to fight this pandemic that is the murder of trans women, especially those of color. As you know, every year, new trans bills are introduced all over the country that only fuel the demonization of trans folk. When I see these things and hear of them, or when we see them and hear of them, we have to be prepared to show up and pressure our elected officials to put a stop to these horrific bills. We must vote, as that is our loudest voice as a community. That is our largest power. We have to show up. We have to do the work. We have to march, just as our ancestors did before us. As a title holder, I have spoken many times against these often archaic bills in an attempt to shine a light and share the truth about our community. We can change the world if we all work together. I was honored to be your keynote speaker this evening, and with little hesitation, I agreed. This day is very somber every year, as a trans woman of color, but these past 2 years have been different. You see, while normally these names are read and it's a very emotional service, I didn't personally know someone until last year. Last year, a dear friend and pageant sister of mine was put on this list by a man who claimed to love her. 3 days before the Trans Day of Remembrance, this man murdered our sister, Carey, in their apartment. Her life was taken from us, but her memory and legacy remain. I challenge all of you to speak up. If you see something that doesn't feel right, it might not be right. Follow your intuition. If you see one of your siblings in danger or you're unsure, ask them how you can help. Ask them how they're doing, if they're okay. You might just save their lives. This year, we have already lost 47 of our fellow siblings. We have got to make sure that we are always showing up for each other. As we've seen, our community and allies are the only ones who seem to have our backs. We must stand together. In closing, I want to share the words from my forever pageant sister and someone who I looked up to dearly. Carey shared these words just 6 months today before she was murdered by her husband. I feel that we can all agree that her message hits right at the core of what we should be thinking about and fighting for as a world. She said, "Today is a very important day for all us trans women. Today we tell the world that we no longer want to die. Today we tell the world that we deserve love and respect. I have a message. If we teach our kids from an early age to love and respect and accept, when your kids go out into the world to live their lives, they will know how to love, respect, and accept anything that is different from them, especially when they meet a trans woman like myself. They will know how to love, respect, and accept. With love, respect, and acceptance, we will have a better world. We will have a better life at the end. We are all humans. We have that right. We want to be safe. We want to be allowed to thrive, and we want to live. Thank you.
Now I'd like to call up our panel for this evening. We have some special guests who have offered to share, reflect, offer witness in this moment. Ezra Collum, Christina King, Alexander Martin, and Marshall Slidell.
I'm Reverend Carol Hope, retired United Church of Christ clergy, and I was looking back through my Facebook memories, and it's been 11 years here in Peoria where many of us have at least posted something, if not have attended TDOR, because we believe in the wholeness of each and every human being. And that's why all of us are here tonight, I hope. And if you're questioning or you have friends who are, please try to help them learn just exactly what transgender actually means, how It may be their neighbor, their child, their parent. It could be anyone who has lived a life not the actual nature to which they were born. So, with that, thank you, Christina. That was moving. Lauren and I, would you like to introduce yourself? Or?
I can do that.
That sounds good.
Good evening, friends. My name is Lauren Padgett, and I am also a clergy member in the United Church of Christ. Currently, I serve as a hospice chaplain, and I have been with Carol for 24 years this coming December. Thank you, but it's not about us.
No.
But I share that just to give some depth and breadth to the trials that we have gone through as spiritual beings in same-gendered loving bodies and being with our brothers and sisters of the spectrum. So wherever you are tonight, the one thing that I want to share with you before we jump into the panelists is that you matter, okay? You matter, and you have a place that you belong. And if you hear nothing else tonight besides the fabulous stories, I want you to hear that. So nothing more to do. Let us jump in with our panelists, and thank you all for being with us tonight.
If each of you would just give a little bit about yourself. I know it's hard to condense a journey, as each of you knows, into a few minutes. But if you would just give a little bit about how you live your life today, and maybe even just a bit about what brought you to your own awareness, or how you became aware you decided to live openly. And if you don't live openly, that's fine. I'm just suggesting that, you are here as a panel, which is a wonderful thing. So, we'll start on the end.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Ezra Collum. I'm 25, and I am a trans artist, activist, and advocate from the ACLU Peoria and the Peoria Guild of Black Artists. I try to support my communities by spreading awareness for Black Lives Matter and the LGBTQ+ communities, specifically the trans communities. And I'm blessed to write and perform spoken word and singing performances at peaceful protests, marches, and rallies I've been able to help organize and host for 2 years now, all around Illinois. My pronouns are he, him, they, them. And yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'd have to say that my very first, I grew up in a very strict religion, and so we didn't have much of internet even access to just regular information. And so I really didn't have a lot of representation growing up in Arizona in an all-white community and in Mormon religion. And so I think though the first time I really knew that I felt different was at least at 8 years old. I'm the youngest of 5 siblings, so I was always using my brother's hand-me-downs and stuff like that, and playing with action figures, and didn't want to play with Barbie dolls, all that stuff. And I just remember 9 years old, I dressed up as Little Bow Wow for Halloween, and it was the first experience of actually passing that I ever had, and I didn't really want to let go of. But looking back now, just recently, I opened a diary, and at 9 years old, I was explaining gender dysphoria without even knowing the definition of it. And just, my mom, she would always put me in pink dresses, and hated them. And, so it's definitely something I've experienced all my life with, but haven't been out since around 2 years ago, well, 3 years ago to my family, and 2 years ago, like publicly. It was a Peoria march that we had for George Floyd. And I remember just being like, this might be a great time to try to say a few things about like just what we experience. And I was so upset about it that I had written something out that I'm normally a singer, but my voice has dropped a couple octaves and I'm working on it. And so I decided to just like write it out anyways, and it became like a poem, and somebody had the audacity to, give me a mic, and I came out there with like no shirt on, pasties and all, like just marching with the sign that Miss King said about Black women's life expectancy is 35 years of age. And I just marched with that sign down there, and it was an amazing feeling. But I had written a poem about it, about George Floyd, and that was the beginning of when I was able to publicly be myself and start doing the things that I needed to do for me and my communities. And I'm just blessed to be able to do that.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ezra.
Keep going.
Yes. Marshall?
All right. I'm Marshall Slidell. I'm 18. My pronouns are they, he. I am not from Illinois originally. I moved here from Colorado Springs, Colorado, about 2 months ago, maybe. So I'm pretty new. Originally, I'm from Indiana. I was born in Indianapolis, and I was raised in way southern Indiana, like Columbus. My family shares Columbus, Indiana with Mike Pence. That's where he was born. Yeah. And I always thought that I was born a boy. It came to much my surprise when I found out that that was not the case. It was very difficult for me to deal with that because that was my life. I was Lee. I was a boy. I wore my little brother's clothing to school. I was already really androgynous. PCOS runs in my family, so I had a little mustache. It worked out pretty well for me, I'd say. When I was about 9 years old, I was diagnosed as transgender, not diagnosed with dysphoria, which is what they do now, but I was diagnosed as transgender, and they sent me to a counselor. It was basically like conversion therapy, which I found out that's what that actually was recently. And that makes me very upset. My counselor told my mom to push pink, so she did. We did not have those resources back then that we do now. That, especially in southern Indiana, that just was not a thing. You have to do like very many legal jump ropes and going through a bunch of hoops to play in any sort of sport if you identify as transgender. You still have to do that today. It's just incredible. When I was 13, I moved to Colorado and I started my medical transition. I started testosterone on April 3rd of 2017, 2018, right after I ended my middle school era in Indiana. So after 7th grade. 3 years after that, I had top surgery. And around that time, I was dealing with a lot of depression. I had just gotten out of a relationship with my partner who is trans, and it really hurt because out of anyone that I would expect to hurt me the most in any sexual way, it would not be my own trans partner, and that hurt me a lot. And it made me really reconsider how I felt about being trans myself. Growing up was really difficult, and hearing how people would talk to me not only as a black person in southern Indiana. I mean, my neighbor had a Confederate flag. At one point, I got a KKK recruitment flyer on my doorstep. When Trump was elected, I was hunted by my school for being black and transgender. I was told to go back to Cuba, not even Cuban and black. We all kind of knew that. And I was not allowed to go to the restroom. So they kept a very close eye on me when I was growing up. When I was 16, I had my surgery. I tried to proceed with my legal transition, which I had to go through Indiana, of course, to do that. It was incredibly hard. I just recently came back from Columbus, getting my driver's permit. I only missed one question, yay. And even there, I had a fight. And at this point in my life, I had court to change my name and my gender marker. And they held up my original birth certificate and said, "That's not true. That's not true. You're a female, because it says that here." And the lady who was supposed to let me have my test, she outed me to a bunch of the customers there, which was very dangerous. I could have been followed home easily. It's a very small town. Being trans has been incredibly difficult. I've hated it for a lot of my life, but I've come to learn that it's not being trans that I hate. It's how people have treated me for being trans, and I will always stand by that. I love being black. I love my partner. I love being gay. I love being transgender. If I could be born again, I would be a trans woman. I wouldn't be cis at all. That's just my life. I love it. That's who I am. I'm Marshall. I'm a trans male, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Marshall. I spent a few years in Evansville, Indiana. I do understand. Mark?
Hello, I am Alexander Martin. My pronouns are they, them. So I moved to Peoria, Illinois about 7 years ago now. I am originally from West Virginia, born and raised in the mountains of West Virginia. I grew up in a valley. I am biracial. My mother's family is white and indigenous, and then my father's family is black. But I was mostly raised by my mother's family. So I did not have a black community growing up. And also in a small town in rural West Virginia, I had no LGBTQ plus representation growing up. From the age of 3, which is about as far back as I can remember, everything before that's kind of fuzzy. But from the age of 3, I knew something was up. I didn't know what that was. I just know that I felt comfortable at home, comfortable around my siblings, but weird in other places. When I would see my extended family, my uncles, my cousins, I felt out of place. I felt weird. And then in going through public school system in West Virginia, which after moving here, a lot of people complain about Illinois, but the resources and protections we have here are astounding, because those do not exist back home. But growing up, I did not have a community. The first time I felt a semblance of community was when I joined band. I met other people who, plot twist, a lot of them are now queer, so we always find each other in some way, shape, or form. But I found a community in that, and in art, and in theater. But I still didn't find a community that looked like me or that felt like me. It wasn't until college that I started meeting other people that I sort of began to acknowledge something. I was like, well, I must be, like, I made friends in college that were gay. And I was like, that must be it. That's the story. That's what I've been hiding. That's what feels right, I think. And so, but I wasn't ready to say that to myself yet. And so I went through college, still closeted. It didn't come out until my senior year to a few people. As like, I think this might be going on. They were like, cool, they were supportive. I'm still friends with those folks today. And then I finished my undergraduate degree and I applied to grad school. And I visited Chicago my senior year of undergrad. And I was like, whoa, the Midwest is really cool and different, because I had a small town kid with big city dreams of moving up to New York. Went to New York a bunch of times in college, but then I visited Chicago and said, I have to go to the Midwest. So I applied to a bunch of schools here, and Bradley accepted me, and so I moved to Peoria. When I came here, I had the blessing of not knowing a single person in this entire city. The only person I was familiar with was my professor, who I was meeting during school applications. So I was like, why not live my truth? And so I came out at the time as a gay man. It feels really weird saying, it's really hard to say. But I was like, that must be it. And it was the first time I was living in my truth in a community that was supportive, and I was around other people that I thought were like me. And in that security and safety net, I started to do things I've always wanted to do. Like, I have a vivid memory of, like, when I was 3 years old, my sister had a Halloween costume where she was a cat, and it had a glove with claws on it. And I wanted nails so bad. And I remember putting on and touching everything in the house, and tapping on things, touching the phone, touching my brother's game, playing Game Boy, until one of my uncles came over, and I was like, oh, this doesn't feel safe. Like, again, when you're a kid, you know something's up. You just don't know what it is, but you also know that when it's not safe, you feel that. You know, they're like, I may get attacked for this. But when I moved here, I didn't know anybody. I was like, well, maybe I'll get my nails done. Maybe I will do this, and started doing these little things that I've been denying myself my whole life. And that sort of created not an identity crisis, but an awakening of sorts, where I did not feel at home. I was around like other people who identified as gay men, but I did not feel connected. I was like, this is my community. I waited my whole life to have this. Why do I feel out of place? Why do I feel weird? And it's like, there's just things that I did not connect with. There were things that I felt so alienated. And I was like, this isn't my right experience, but I don't know what it is. And then I started performing in drag. And in doing drag, I met lovely people like my sister right here. And I was surrounded and nurtured by trans femininity for the first time in my life. And it unlocked something in me to have that part that I've hid away for so long not only be taken care of, but be celebrated. Felt so good. And like a lot of entertainers, drag helps a lot of folks find their identity. It helps them find their platform, because it's a safe space led by strong Black trans femme people that is protected, and you're safe in that environment sometimes. And this was about 3 years ago, 2018, 2019, I had an identity crisis at that point. I was in a very dark space in my life. I just finished grad school, but as someone who freshly graduated, there wasn't a lot of job prospects. I was working a million jobs. I was pulled to my wit's end, having this sort of out-of-body experience, not feeling connected to myself. And I was like, I think I must be a woman. Like, that must be what's going on. That must be my truth. That must be what this weird pool is that I felt, this disconnect. And I tried to do the steps I did when I came out to myself the first time of like, is this your truth? Live in this. but it didn't quite feel right. I didn't feel connected to that identity. And I didn't really know, like I sort of knew, but I didn't know there was another option. I didn't know what to do. I didn't feel comfortable. I felt nervous. I was like, well, if I don't transition, like, am I trans enough to claim that term that relates to how I feel in my own body, connected to myself? Like, am I enough? Am I going to be welcomed? And it took, in 2019, my younger sister passed away. And in that moment, I was like, well, I'm going to stop doing anything that doesn't relate to making me feel better, making me feel more whole. Quit all the jobs I didn't like, focused on the things that I like doing. I'm an artist, I'm a performer, I'm an advocate, I'm an educator. I work in sexual health, providing resources for folks. And I cut away everything else. And I was like, this is the time that I can start living in my truth. This is the time I can start being myself. And so I started, it was gentle. In my Instagram profile, I started putting under bio, it was like, non-binary, trans, very small text at the bottom, and then my pronouns. Someone noticed my pronouns and used them without even me asking, because they saw it online, and it felt so calming and affirming. And then I had a partner that really nurtured that aspect of me and helped me navigate my identity, and then started meeting more people like me. And now I get to live my truth. Like, I'm a trans, non-binary person. I'm trans feminine. I was nurtured by women my whole life. I was nurtured by trans femmes in my adult life. They've helped me navigate and find who I am, and now I know my truth, and now I get to share that with all of you. So thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you.
I haven't seen her in so long, so this is just really unreal. I just have to make sure she's here.
Christina, do you have anything specific you'd like to share? I mean, feel free to.
Yeah, no, I covered a lot of it. I think that my past is very similar to a lot of my friends and family up here, that I didn't have access to the internet, so I kind of grasped at, I didn't know that there were trans people. I didn't know that was an option. So, like, watching things like The Birdcage, I'm like, oh, I must be a gay man. Like, this makes sense. Like, I like boys, never liked girls. That's obviously what it is. And then, as they've stated in their own stories as well, that as you start to live in that truth, it's just not quite there. And so it's through just expression and drag as well. I started off in drag, and when I started in drag, I had not transitioned, and that quickly I was like, oh, this is good. I like this. And that is where I found Christina, was through drag, but also through these idols that I saw on TV, who I was like, oh, there's a way to do this. It's not just that you're stuck in drag and that's the only way you can live. There's another option. And then through that, started the transition.
I have a question for any one of you. Do you have anything you'd like to ask? I'm sorry. I think it's hard with the lack of awareness and support that comes from religious institutions, all of them across the board. But I have maintained that one becomes fully complete and whole when that spiritual part that we maybe don't want to acknowledge even exists because we've been bashed or we've been thrown out of places, out of churches or synagogues, or it doesn't matter where, but that when we can celebrate that in some way, without harm to self, or it may be the performing that is your religion. I mean, that place that really you find the comfort of self, and hopefully the comfort of self, therefore in community. Have you experienced that? Do you think that's all hogwash?
I personally have experienced that. Growing up in a very religious home, I had a very strong tie to Christianity. Through kind of having a really bad breakup, I had a nervous breakdown, had some other addiction issues. I really felt lost. I didn't have that tie to the church because I had been hurt by the church so much. I had been told I was horrible and I was going to hell. And so for me, what was the purpose? What was the purpose of going to church? What was the purpose of waking up and saying, well, I'm going to get up just to be told you are a horrid person who does not deserve to be alive? And so I did feel a void. And through that, though, I've kind of found my own spirituality. So I am very active in my church, but I have gotten to the point that I don't tie my spirituality to a building. It's through nature, it's through caring for myself, it's through loving others, it's through community service, it's through all of these different things that fill up my cup that I feel spirituality, that I feel a higher being, that I feel our goddess, pouring over me in that moment.
Thank you. Yes. What Christianity and other religions ought to be. I'm sorry.
I will also say after coming out for the however many umpteenth dozen time, the most recent time, I felt not very connected to my body. Like I have bad body image and felt bad, not at home in my flesh vessel, so to speak, for a large portion of my life. But then after sort of coming out, living my truth, I felt for the first time grounded in my physical form. Like when no one's home, I just wear like a bathrobe and walk around the house, and like looking at my own reflection, looking at my body, being at home in my shapes, and feeling that connection to myself felt so grounding. It feels like when you perform, it feels like, and it's like in that moment, I'm like, I have been trying to perform a certain way to fit, and my body didn't fit that. Like now my body fits how I feel, and it looks how I feel, and I can celebrate that, and I feel that connectedness. And like I grew up Southern Baptist, which is why I'm not Southern Baptist anymore. And I have found a different sort of practice, but I fully believe that LGBTQ plus folks, I believe that trans individuals are sacred and are divine. I don't know if reincarnation exists, but I think if it does, our souls have been around for a while. And when you connect to that, when you live in that truth, you shine really bright. Unfortunately, that's why our community faces so much violence, is people want to snuff out that light. But I come from a platform of celebrating joy. I will always mourn loss, but I'm here to celebrate joy and celebrate the time that I have in this vessel now that I'm finally at home in it. And it's in those moments that I feel connected and grounded and connected to the folks around me.
Thanks.
I definitely have a similar background when it comes to spirituality and stuff like that. And I think I left the church when I was 17. At that point, I was probably expected to go on a mission somewhere out of the country and have kids immediately afterwards. And I came out when I was 19 as a lesbian. And for a while I was it was hard, but I was comfortable with it. And then after a while, it took me actually, because I grew up in Arizona, it took me moving here actually to realize it was more than that. And at that point, I had the same void, loss of spirituality and longing for it. And because at that point I lost a lot of people in my life that were really important to me, that I'd grown up with, and I felt again like I was performing for my entire life in order to be still accepted and loved and feel safe and comfort. And and it was until I accepted that I really started treatment, going to the doctor and receiving hormone replacement therapy and things like that, that I felt like a person I could love. I never really felt pretty before until then. myself or plan for a future until I started being able to be capable of like loving myself and trying not to focus on everybody else around me and what they thought. But yeah, I've been like happy about it. I've been like more comfortable wearing pink. Like my mom, she had said men don't wear pink, so I dyed my whole wardrobe pink. Like so yeah, I'm just, you know, I'm really actually, it wasn't until after I started transitioning that I began embracing my femininity and my spirituality and trying, you know, I think it's different, a different definition for everybody, but for me it's just feeling whole enough to be able to help yourself and then in turn help others. And it's a work in progress. Like I think we're gonna be working on ourselves or should be working on ourselves our entire lives. But yeah, it's definitely something that I'm happy to be able to do and blessed to.
Thanks.
Going
Okay.
off that real quick, I just want to say to everybody, I feel like we live in a culture that chastises vanity and gets mad at folks for being vain. Don't listen to that. Celebrate yourself. Take that selfie every day. Especially for my trans siblings out there, you have worked really hard to live in that truth. So like, take a photo, take 2 photos a day, 10. Celebrate yourself. Celebrate your body. Wear what you want, and don't be afraid of vanity. People act like it's a bad thing, but you can be a little bit vain and enjoy yourself. You've worked hard to be alive this long, so keep celebrating.
You're here. Thank you. There is a question that I would like to ask all of you. All of you in some way have alluded to either mental illness and addiction problems. Several of you have alluded to domestic violence issues within your relationships. Unfortunately, the sad truth behind TDOR is that we are here to remember those who have faced violence. And I would say that it's probably pretty safe to share or to say that many of us who identify somewhere on the spectrum have endured some sort of violence. You all have also shared about how important it was to find those places of acceptance, those safe places. Given that background and that construct and our reason for being here tonight, what would you share to someone that is struggling in the midst of either domestic violence or addiction or self-hate and harm? I'll leave it wide open.
Personally, as someone who, a lot of people ask me when I say that I moved here from Colorado, oh my God, why'd you move? Why'd you move? My parents are going through a very, very, very difficult divorce. My mom is actually supposed to be here in 2 hours or so, back from Colorado. My stepfather, he was extremely abusive, and we have been around him for many, many, many years, but we stayed. And although I could be very upset with my mom for not letting us go, I've learned that sometimes you do need to stay, and it's okay if you feel like you need to stay, and it's okay if you feel like you're not ready to let go. My mom, I grew up with my mom and my brother, that's it. No dad, no nothing. It was just me and my mom, that was the team. And for once we have someone who stays, and if we want food, we can get it. I wanted top surgery, our insurance failed. We paid $10,000 out of pocket in the span of 2 weeks for my surgery because of my stepdad and my mom working very, very hard. If we did not stay with him, I would have probably been on a list for TDOR, to be honest. It was really bad. I was extremely depressed. I was getting sick because I was depressed. It was just not a good situation. A lot of people feel really stressed when they're in situations where they know they're being abused and they feel like they have to leave and they're being pressured to leave when they're not ready to. And if you're not ready to do something, you shouldn't do it. You need to give yourself space and time to process and deal with your stuff. And that's okay. If we would have left, I wouldn't be here, whether it's in Illinois or alive in general. My mom is very smart and hardworking, and I'm glad that she did stay because I know in her silly little mind it was for a very good reason, and that reason will always be to protect me and my brother. The reason that I stayed with my partner was because I'd never had something happen to me like that before. I tore my ACL, MCL, meniscus. He helped take care of me, and he helped get me to my classes. My school's really big, and we lived fairly close by, and I didn't want to bother my mom. She was working. Things with my parents were not going good. So I didn't leave, and that's okay. I wasn't ready to, and I needed help, and I know how I am. If I bother my mom while she's working, I will feel so upset. I hate it. But yeah, I'd always say if you need time to consider your actions, then consider them. Think before you speak has always been everyone's biggest motto. Think before you do something that's smart. If you're ready to do something, then you should do it, and you should be passionate about what you're doing, always.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jennifer, do you have anything that you'd like to ask before we open it up to the?
No.
Okay. If you all have a question, TJ, if you'd like to go, and anybody else would like to ask a question of the panel, is that okay with you guys? Okay.
All right, so, like you, I do drag. Anyway,
Hang on, TJ.
like most of you, I do drag. I identify as a lesbian female. This is my son. He's about the same age as my great nephew. And my great nephew right now, he has divulged to the entire family that he's bi, which I broke the barrier for everybody when I came out as lesbian, because I grew up Mormon. And so he's came out as bi, and nobody has an issue with that or anything. His boyfriend is a trans male, and they're in 7th grade? Yeah, you're in 6th, so they're 7th grade. Anyway, here in Peoria. And, you know, I've always told him about the bi thing, that people just make fun of you because they're jealous. They don't live your truth. They're, you know, either they totally are straight or they're trapped in whatever situation. I said they make fun because they don't know what to do. But now that he has a trans male boyfriend, he's getting even more so teased and bullied at school. And I actually have to go to his school on Monday because I don't know if y'all know about Peoria Public Schools food, but he says that the only way he can eat it is to put ranch dressing on it. Well, of course, that gets him a little bit a flack because he likes the white stuff. And the only fruit that he will eat, his entire life has been a banana. So he gets dogged on about that. He can barely eat his lunch at school every day for getting flack for dating a trans male and those things. What can I do other than what I'm already doing to help him so that he doesn't go down the major depression track that we know we all go through?
I would say making as safe of a space as possible in the home environment where he can be himself, where like you're free to express that part of themselves, to know what it feels like to live in your truth and be nurtured, because that little bit of light is what's going to get them through school. Because like I also went through a public school system in a rural area, and if it wasn't, like even if you aren't out, they know kids are horrible and they will pick on you. And then depending on the school district, like I got picked on a lot for being black and for being visibly queer. Like, and I wasn't even out in high school, but they know. So it's like school, aside from like working with a counselor, trying to make safe spaces there's steps you can take, but we all know that there's its limits. But I think if you have a nurturing environment, like where they can meet other people, where they can live in their truth, where they can be celebrated, taking them to like the family pride events and things like that, and letting them see those members of the community, I think that gives them the wherewithal and the strength to be like, school sucks. And like we all, even like, it sucks extra hard for our community, but like everybody knows it's rough.
He gets that at home. His parents are both black. He gets it at our house. He gets it at church when he goes to church, because he's either going to the UU church or he's coming to me. And so he gets that every place else, but school is the big issue.
Yeah, I think, and also like, you're doing the best you can, and so keep up the good work. Anytime there's a public event where they can see other folks in the community, especially adults in the community who are alive and well and thriving, I think that gives kids a lot of hope. And then maybe teach them about organizing. Like I've seen students, like I teach gender and sexuality in District 150 schools, and I see students creating safe spaces for themselves because they have to. It's unfortunate they have to. But I see them getting the wherewithal from supportive parents, from supportive colleagues, supportive classmates to make these spaces for themselves. And I think encouraging that to finding a community that is safe and nurturing will not only help him survive public school, but then also help him find a community within that struggle.
To add to that, I always tell the youth that the day is just 24 hours. And I know at that age it's hard. Even in my 20s when I had an eating disorder and struggled with alcohol, there were days I had to tell myself, you just have to get through the day. Tomorrow is a new day, it will get easier, and that's always what I tell my LGBTQ babies, is that I know it seems hard, I know it seems impossible. I was the kid that I used to beg my teacher to let me clean the desks. I did not want to go to the lunchroom because the same thing happened. I was tormented and picked on, and things were thrown at me, and all of these things, but it does end. And just that reminder every day that I promise, I know it doesn't feel like it's going to, but it will end, it will get better. And like you said, a lot of it is, a lot of the same people who picked on me since I transitioned and have turned into a trans Barbie absolutely love me now. So it's frustrating, but I always try to remind people it does get better. The day will end, and there will be a new tomorrow.
TJ, there's a great PFLAG group also that I think probably would help. There are some younger questioning trans, bi, gay, lesbian allies in that group, I guess. So I really do think that might be a place for you to connect, and for the kids, okay?
Do we actually have in Peoria, because we used to have Rainbow Kids, Rainbow Youth?
Yeah. Not to my knowledge.
Is there anything like that anymore? Because
Not-
I can tell you his counselor is telling us that there's a big need for it and is asking clergy to volunteer to do a group.
Well, I do think the PFLAG group might very well be that source also. I mean, we can find out. We can talk more about that later. Yeah. Okay,
So
but
with
I
the
do think
legacy-
that's something, and for the rest of you as well.
Is that Alexander?
Pardon me?
I was going to say with the legacy project that's starting now as well, a lot of a lot of teachers are getting safe zone training because they have to,
Yeah.
and they're incorporating LGBTQ plus education into all the courses, like not specific sections, but just incorporating it into the narrative statewide. And so there also will be a lot more faculty because I've sat on a few of the trainings. There's going to be a lot more faculty who are going to help make safer spaces in the school, and we'll be doing this education with them as well. So it is going to get a little bit better. It just was implemented like this year, so fingers crossed that it goes well.
I think something that's really important is education. Before I moved here, I was part of a group called Inside Out Youth Services. We provide resources like, anything from quitting smoking to self-defense classes. We had it all, like karate. It was crazy. If you would like, they are mostly in like the Colorado, like Pikes Peak area, so clearly they wouldn't be able to like come to you. But they are all for giving out free resources, anything, especially if you are in the 13 to 24 age range. You can join the Discord. You don't have to be in Colorado. It's all free. They have Smart Hearts on Wednesdays. They have sex-inclusive sex ed, gender-inclusive sex ed. They have anything that you could ever want or need for you, your kiddo, your son, even. Anything. If you would like to talk to me after, I can totally help you with that. I would love to.
I think that we're going to have to kind of wrap this part of the program up. And I hate to because I love hearing from all of you, and please connect with me on Facebook. But I want you to connect with one another too. Take some time after maybe to share information if you are comfortable doing so, so that you can't get information. You can share information with one another. That's going to be really, really important. I can't thank you all enough for being willing to come, share, respond. It's this kind of thing. It's having those spaces where you can share and where you can live into that person that you truly are. And I'm not a performer of something that everything I do is a performance. I just am saying that I think it's a lot like that. You get to feel and you get to know who you are when you can share information and be in the midst of those who are comfortable with you rather than our world, which really has become so negative. It's very difficult to let that get you down, but at the same time, we have to live into hope. We have got to learn to be kind to one another. We can do it. They also need to do it. But it shouldn't be a we, they. It needs to be all of us working together. Yes, sir. Okay.
Well, I consider myself like a feminine male because I like to play with Barbies and stuff, but I didn't think I was like trans, but how do you know for sure? Because sometimes I'll be laying in my bed thinking, maybe I am, maybe I'm not.
Can I get you guys to talk with him one-on-one? Would you mind doing that? That would really be wonderful. Would that be okay with you? I think that's really a good thing to do, if you don't mind. And nothing like swinging in here and taking over and doing this, but thank you all. You don't know how important it is that you are here for yourselves, but for each and every one of us, for myself included, for Lauren, for two. I'm sure it's important that we all came together. Dana, it's good to see you. Thank you very much. And another educator in our midst that that I would like to share. So, love you all, love yourselves, and most of all, celebrate today because it is a day, a sad reason we celebrate, but we celebrate because we are in this movement together. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you again for letting us be a part of this. We do have to bow out for the rest of it. It is breaking our hearts, but thank you, and God bless to you all.
Please come back.
At this point, I want to thank our panelists, and we now get to move to our performance by Ezra. I want to invite you to come forward if you want to. You can stay up here or find a seat. I don't think we discussed that transition yet.
All right, I'll try to make this quick. Once I'm done sharing my poems, I'd be happy to share where you can go to share and donate to mine or other sites and funds that help people like me if you're in need of help, resources, research, or capable of sharing or donating the sites. The poems I'm sharing today are brand new and pretty personal to me. I've never performed them before, and with that, I'd like to give y'all like a disclaimer of the topics. The topics of these poems contain content that can be disturbing to some viewers and listeners, and I wanted to thank you all again for tuning in on this day in this beautiful house of worship. I am a sin. How can I not exist, but believe that you exist? Blind faith has gotten me nowhere because I lost everything when I began to live. So why is killing myself a sin when also being myself is? I'm making myself sick. I can't eat anymore. I'm sleepless. I doubt that the story will have a good ending. It's senseless. I should have known my family would leave me. My friends disowned me. I can't be without being. Isn't it meaningless? I don't know how long I can handle this. Labeled a freak and outcasted. They said that I was mental. They put me in a religious hospital. The conversion therapist there, he pulled out his pistol, a cock, a blast, an assault with no rifle. I was trifled, terrified. I was completely baffled. Why couldn't I just be normal? I'm afraid to go anywhere because pain's just around the corner. The coroner won't know how to dress me properly. They never addressed me preferably, treat me as a disease, and toss out my body. It's raining, it's pouring, found hanged in the morning. A statistical systemic fact that everyone's ignoring, and nobody is mourning. Being erased from this earth doesn't seem all that boring. Not being remembered was what I'd miss. Good time spent soon slips, and I'm full of spitefulness. But your memories fade because of your bliss. Your privilege, your ignorance is what killed me. Your toxicity is poisoning. The gaslighting has destroyed me. I would say that I'm sorry, but I'm still waiting on your apology. They beat me. He stepped on his throat. No questions asked or provoking. They hurt me. She made my nose bleed. You all said that you loved me. I was adopted as a baby into this nuclear Mormon family, and now they want nothing to do with me. Even though I forgave their abuse countlessly, I tried to forget it because they were my siblings. They abandoned me, so I'm abandoning my spirit from my body. My soul still haunting what was left of my sanity till the last moment I cease to breathe, a crippling disappointment forever I shall be. Someone I don't recognize, a fraud that's deceased. Goodbye to the girl I never was or could be. My outside never matched what was inside of me. Not a uterus, but my brain, hormones chemically. I have always been a man, just have done so secretively inside, but now unconditionally. You cut me down from the rope while simultaneously beating my knees, took my hope away, the idea of my end. I know that you pleased, taking that away from me too. What was left for me to do? Lost my job legally because they could fire me for my personal identity. After that, only men would hire me. No housing for a trans fool unless I sell my body and find someone to screw. And there was nothing that I could do. Ironic how it wasn't at the hands of not I nor you. Instead, in a hotel room, I was murdered by some dude. But my story and other victims will not make the news. Everyone has forgotten, like they never even knew. Trans people have the highest amount of youth homelessness, suicide, and murder due to hate, violence, ignorance. The majority of trans people who are murdered are Black trans women with a life expectancy of 35, like we've covered. It's often domestic, oftentimes the police, often cold cases. Rest in peace for the injustice of the murder of Marsha P. and so many others. Over 70 of us were murdered just in the last 2 years, an epidemic and counting, and so many people seem to not notice or want to acknowledge any of them. I created the hashtag Pay Us Some Mind to try and bring more awareness to cases like these, because we are so much more than this and can do so much better for our struggling communities. This next poem is much more lighthearted, and I call it Gold Never Stays. Life is what you make it. Cherish your gold, for it never stays. It fades away, all memory, as our existence is gone in an instance with no promise but eternal rest. Life is a test no one can prepare you for. The gore can strike you to your core and leaves you breathless. As much as days and nights can seem endless, the universe goes on, even with one less. So please, don't forget to make it your best. Don't live with regret so overbearing that you long for death. You're not useless. You're not worthless. You were born for a purpose. You are perfect. Love yourself because you deserve no less. Fight the demons that tell you you're trash. What is glass but tortured sand? A lump of coal is broken and thrashed until it's a diamond. A kiss with lipstick so soft you may miss it. Pay attention to your needs. It's okay to be emotional. Set boundaries, set goals. You are in control. You're the breath of fresh air. For your life, embrace it. You're deserving of love and all the pain of beauty it comes with. Thank you. You can find my funding page by searching on GoFundMe's Ezra's Gender Affirming Surgery on their website, and I also have the link on my Facebook page under Ezra Collum. Thank you so much for being here and being willing to listen and lift Black voices and giving me a platform to be able to share my words with you. Other sites that help trans people and people of the LGBTQ+ communities with resources, research, and funding are hrc.org, which is the Human Rights Campaign, or the Trevor Project, both dedicating and helping people, and our nonprofit that survive through donations. Thank you again, and please always remember to pay us some mind.
I have the task of leading us in the candlelight part of our vigil in the naming of names. And as we begin, I want to offer one thought, something that just strikes me as in every year, is that the list of people that we have before us are simply the ones that we know of. And just how many names will never make a list, how many people will never be known. And yet they are people, and we can simply do our best to offer the love that they never received that they should have, and the recognition of their humanity and fabulousness. So I want to enter into this moment of reading of names with a reflection called Bear Witness by Amy Brooks. We people gathered here today on the quest for truth and meaning with a mission of love, we bear witness to record the human lives extinguished simply because these people dared to live authentically. We bear witness to the lives reported and the deaths of transgender people globally so far this year. We bear witness to the lives and reported deaths of transgender people in these United States so far this year. We bear witness to the unreported ones, the uncounted ones, the unnamed many, whose lives and deaths will only be ever known by the universe. We bear witness. In these times of heightened anxiety, we who are gathered today reject the teachings of division and ignorance and commit to siding with love against hatred. We bear witness against systemic power structures that treat transgender, genderqueer, and non-binary people, particularly those who are people of color, of marginalized identities, as being anything less than human. We bear witness. On this day, we who are queer folk and allies gather together, uphold the principle that every person has worth and dignity. We bear witness. For those transgender, genderqueer, and non-binary people gathered among us, we bear witness. For those who are allied to the cause of protecting our transgender, genderqueer, and non-binary siblings, we bear witness. And for those who exist boldly, unapologetically in public space as the fully authentic transgender, genderqueer, and non-binary people, we bear witness. We now offer the names who must be named in this year. Nicole, if you'd like to come help me. Yep. We'll be lighting candles for those who are being named while we have some music from Dana. And so we begin. Tayana Alexander. Samuel Edmund Damian Valentin. Bianca Muffin Banks. Dominique Jackson. 50 Brands. Alexis Braxton. China Carrillo. Jeffrey J.J. Bright. Jasmine Canaday. Jenna Franks. Diamond Kyrie Sanders. Rayana Pardo. Jada Peterson. Dominique Luscious. Remy Fennel. Tiara Banks. Natalia Smut, Iris Santos, Tiffany Thomas, Carrie Washington, Jahiro De Alto, Whispering Wind, Bear Spirit, Sophie Vasquez, Danica Danny Henson, Serenity Hollis, Oliver Ollie Taylor, Thomas Hardin, Poe Black, E.J. Boykin, Adalyn Evans, Taya Ashton, Shai Vanderpump, Tierra Marie Lewis, Miss Coco, Pooh Johnson, Desaya Monet, Brianna Hamilton, Kier Laprie Cartier, Mel Groves, Royal Poetical Stars, Zoella Zoe Rose Martinez, Joe Acker, Jesse Hart, Ricky Otumuro, Marquisha Lawrence, Jenny De Leon, I close with a prayer for this day written by the Reverend Sunshine Jeremiah Wolf. I understand this is the prayer that's often offered in this service in this city. This is my second year in this city. It's been an honor to offer this again in this community. On this Transgender Day of Remembrance, we remember those who have been murdered for being who they are, those who face violence on a daily basis, those who have lost loved ones, and those who worry for loved ones. May we come to a time when we cease to shame children around gender roles and expression, where we allow for freedom, for exploration of identity and expression, and to a world that operates from love, especially when things are difficult and confusing. May all of us who live with the threat of violence find support, strength, community, hope, and safety. Having done our work, the work of the people in remembering, in honoring, in naming those who have died, those of us who continue, those of us who each have our story to offer in this time. We have done this sacred work together. We have been a blessing to each other in the sharing of stories, in the naming of truths, in the naming of struggle and grief and hardship. We have done this work in the naming of hope, in the naming of possibility, in the naming of finding a way through. Let us go forth, united in our commitment to keep finding our way through, to keep, as was said this evening, to keep getting through this day and the next day and the next, in the hopes that we might, when we gather next year, because we will have to gather next year, in the hope that maybe that list will be a little smaller, and maybe our company and our siblings in our transgender community will be a little larger. Let us go forth in love and hope